Open your fridge right now, and there's a genuinely good chance you'll find a carton of milk sitting inside it, and an even better chance that milk came from a cow. Here's the uncomfortable part. Humans have consumed milk from at least 8 different animal species throughout history, and cow milk isn't the most nutritious option on that entire list. It's not particularly close. So let's actually ask the question properly. If cow milk isn't objectively the healthiest, most nutrient-dense option available, why did an entire global food system converge so completely around one specific animal? Because the honest answer isn't that cow milk won some kind of fair nutritional competition. It's a story about biology, historical accident, and industrial scaling, 3 forces that happened to align in cow milk's favor long before anyone was comparing nutrition labels. Before getting into why cow milk specifically won out, it's worth asking an even more basic question most people never think to raise. Why humans drink any animal's milk at all? Every mammal species produces milk for exactly one biological purpose, feeding its own offspring. No other species on Earth routinely consumes another species' milk as a dietary staple the way humans do. And there's a second, equally strange detail sitting underneath that first one. Humans are also the only species that continues drinking milk well past infancy. Every other mammal weans off milk the moment it can process solid food. A wolf pup, a lion cub, a young chimpanzee all stop within weeks or months. Milk consumption comes with a biological expiration date built directly into mammalian development, and for most of human history, that same expiration date applied to us too. This connects to something genuinely important worth understanding directly, because roughly 2/3 of adults worldwide today are lactose intolerant, and that figure doesn't represent some kind of medical disorder. It represents the original, default human condition. The ability to comfortably digest milk into adulthood comes from a specific genetic trait called lactase persistence, and researchers studying its origins have found it only became widespread within a relatively small number of populations, most notably certain Northern European groups, alongside specific pastoral communities in parts of Africa and the Middle East, populations that developed this trait specifically after humans began domesticating dairy animals roughly 7,000 to 9,000 years ago. Everyone outside those specific populations is still running what amounts to the ancestral default setting, a digestive system where milk tolerance simply fades once childhood ends. Being able to drink a glass of cow milk comfortably as an adult isn't the biological norm for humans. It's a relatively recent genetic exception. Now let's turn to why cow milk specifically became the dominant global default, because the answer has surprisingly little to do with nutrition and considerably more to do with practical economics. A dairy cow can produce somewhere in the range of 6 to 7 gallons of milk daily. A goat, by comparison, produces well under a gallon, and sheep produce even less than that. When early agricultural societies were deciding which animal to build an entire food system around, raw production volume alone made an enormous difference. Cattle also proved easier to manage in large herds, tolerated a wider range of climates than several alternative dairy species, and required considerably less individualized care than smaller animals typically demand. Cow milk didn't rise to dominance because it outperformed everything else nutritionally. It rose to dominance because it scaled more efficiently than any realistic alternative. Once you actually compare milk from different species side by side, the nutritional picture looks genuinely different from what most people assume. Goat milk offers a genuinely useful case study here, because its fat globules are notably smaller than those found in cow milk, a structural difference that makes it meaningfully easier to digest for many people, including some individuals who specifically struggle with cow milk. Goats also thrive in dry, rugged terrain where cattle simply can't survive, which helps explain why goat milk remains the second most widely consumed milk globally, right behind cow milk, particularly across regions where cattle farming was never a practical option in the first place. Sheep milk pushes this comparison considerably further, and by most conventional nutritional measures, it genuinely outperforms cow milk. Sheep milk contains roughly double the fat and protein content of cow milk alongside meaningfully higher levels of calcium and vitamin B12. This is precisely why sheep milk became the foundation for particularly dense, rich cheeses, Roquefort, and Pecorino among the most well-known examples, since a considerably higher concentration of nutrients exists within the same basic volume of liquid. Buffalo milk extends this pattern even further still. It carries higher fat content than both cow and sheep milk, which is exactly why it became the specific milk used in authentic mozzarella production, and it delivers more calcium per serving than standard cow milk as well. Across large parts of South Asia, buffalo milk isn't treated as some kind of specialty alternative. It functions as the primary, dominant dairy product within entire regional food systems. The comparison becomes genuinely unusual once you move beyond the milks most Western audiences would recognize at all. Camel milk remains a genuine daily dietary staple across parts of the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia, and its specific properties are worth examining directly. It contains notably lower lactose levels than cow milk, higher vitamin C content, and includes includes insulin-like protein compounds that researchers have specifically studied for their potential relevance to blood sugar regulation. Populations that rely heavily on camel milk have shown lower rates of certain metabolic conditions in some studies, though researchers remain genuinely careful about separating the specific contribution of the milk itself from broader lifestyle and dietary factors within those same populations. Horse and donkey milk represent perhaps the most genuinely surprising entries on this comparative list because nutritionally they sit closer to human breast milk than any other animal milk on Earth, lower in fat, higher in lactose, with a protein structure notably gentler on human digestion than cow milk's protein profile. Historically, donkey milk was actually used as a substitute infant formula in parts of Europe during periods when a mother was unable to nurse directly, a genuinely practical historical application rather than a mere curiosity. So if you laid out cow, goat, sheep, buffalo, camel, and donkey milk side by side and asked which one is objectively the healthiest, the honest answer is that there simply isn't one clear universal winner. Sheep milk wins on raw nutrient density. Camel milk offers unique bioactive compounds none of the others provide. Donkey milk wins specifically on digestibility and structural closeness to human milk. Cow milk genuinely excels at exactly one specific thing: availability, a direct consequence of the massive, deeply established global supply chain built specifically around it over many centuries. This naturally raises a related question worth addressing directly, because raw, unpasteurized milk comes up constantly in health-focused conversations, and the honest picture here involves a genuine trade-off worth understanding clearly. Advocates for raw milk are correct that pasteurization does reduce certain naturally occurring enzymes and can subtly alter some proteins within milk. However, pasteurization wasn't developed as some kind of unnecessary industrial interference. It was specifically developed because unpasteurized milk was making meaningful numbers of people seriously, sometimes fatally, ill. Raw milk can carry dangerous pathogens, including Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria, exactly the organisms pasteurization exists specifically to eliminate. Public health data has consistently linked raw milk consumption to a disproportionately high share of dairy-related illness outbreaks relative to how comparatively few people actually drink it. The nutritional argument for raw milk isn't entirely without merit, but it represents a genuine trade-off, a modest potential nutrient advantage weighed directly against measurably elevated illness risk, not a straightforward, risk-free upgrade. This connects back to something genuinely important about the evolutionary angle we covered earlier, because the more precise question was never really which milk is universally best in the abstract, it's which milk a given population's ancestors specifically adapted to process over generations. Populations with a long history of cattle herding developed lactase persistence specifically calibrated toward cow milk. Populations built around different dairy animals developed correspondingly different digestive adaptations. In a genuine sense, the most personally appropriate milk for any individual may have less to do with which option dominates global agriculture today, and considerably more to do with which specific milk that person's own ancestral lineage had generations to biologically prepare for. This brings us to a genuinely modern wrinkle in this entire story. Plant-based milk alternatives, almond, oat, soy, and coconut among the most common. It's worth being precise here, none of these qualify as milk in any actual biological sense, since no animal produced them for the purpose of feeding offspring. They're simply water blended with plant material specifically engineered to mimic dairy's texture and basic function. Their popularity surged substantially, at least in part because such a large share of the global population is lactose intolerant by biological default, meaning a plant-based substitute conveniently sidesteps the entire digestive problem rather than solving it. These alternatives aren't nutritionally interchangeable with one another either. Soy milk offers the closest protein content match to cow milk, making it the most common recommended substitute specifically for people replacing dairy for nutritional reasons. Oat milk runs considerably higher in carbohydrates and fiber, but contains minimal protein. Almond milk typically ranks lowest in both calories and protein among common options, often functioning closer to lightly flavored water than a genuine nutritional substitute unless it's specifically fortified. Coconut milk carries a notably heavy saturated fat content, behaving considerably more like cream than conventional milk. There's something genuinely interesting worth noting here, because in a specific sense, oat or soy milk might actually represent a more evolutionarily normal beverage for an adult human to drink than cow milk does, precisely because neither one requires a specific genetic mutation just to digest comfortably. Your digestive system was never specifically designed to process any of these plant-based substitutes by default either, but at least their consumption doesn't depend on lactase persistence to avoid genuine discomfort the way cow milk consumption does for a majority of the world's adult population. So the picture that emerges here isn't really about cow milk being the objectively superior choice nature or nutrition science would have selected if starting from scratch. It's about a specific combination of production volume, herd manageability, and historical timing that allowed one particular animal's milk to scale into a global default long before anyone was systematically comparing nutritional content across species. Sheep and buffalo milk outperform cow milk across several direct nutritional measures. Camel milk offers specific bioactive compounds cow milk simply doesn't contain. Donkey milk digests in a way structurally closer to the milk every human was originally built to drink as an infant. And even the modern raw milk trend, despite genuine enthusiast interest, largely represents trading a modest nutrient gain for a real, measurable safety risk that pasteurization was specifically developed to eliminate. So the next time you pour a glass of milk without a second thought, it's worth remembering that somewhere else on this planet, someone is doing the exact same casual, unremarkable thing with milk from an animal you've likely never once considered drinking from, and by several genuine nutritional measures, their glass might be doing considerably more for their body than yours is doing for you. We simply never got that particular memo, mostly because the cow happened to get there first.